Good day. Today's lecture is devoted to the forms of organization of education in higher education institutions. This topic is especially important because university teaching is shaped not only by curriculum content, but also by the way in which learning is organized, structured, and delivered. Consequently, the educational result depends to a considerable extent on the chosen form of instruction. A lecture, a seminar, a practical class, a laboratory session, or independent work may involve the same subject matter. However, each form develops it in a different pedagogical way. Therefore, the study of educational forms is essential for understanding how higher education achieves intellectual depth, practical competence, and professional readiness. At the outset, the presentation clarifies the general educational orientation of the lecture. It aims first to help students understand the main forms of teaching used in higher education. Second, it seeks to distinguish between different lecture formats. Third, it emphasizes the development of practical skills through applied and interactive learning. Thus, the lecture is organized around three major directions: conceptual understanding, classification of teaching forms, and the practical value of these forms in academic preparation. In this respect, the lecture does not merely describe university instruction, rather, it explains its internal logic and pedagogical function. A form of education is defined here as the way learning is organized and the manner in which classes are conducted. This definition is important because it directs our attention to the external structure of teaching, that is, the arrangement of time, interaction, and pedagogical procedure. This slide also identifies three key elements: organization, method, and purpose. Organization refers to the structured arrangement of the learning process. Method concerns the specific way in which teaching is carried out. Purpose, finally, is determined by the goals of the lesson and by the content to be taught. Consequently, the choice of form should always be guided by pedagogical intention rather than by routine alone. The next slide presents the principal forms of education used in higher institutions: lectures, practical classes, seminars, laboratory work, independent work, practice or internship, and consultations. Each of these serves a distinct role in the learning process. Lectures provide systematic presentation of core material. Practical classes convert theory into action. Seminars strengthen discussion and argumentation. Laboratory work enables experimental investigation. Independent work develops self-directed study. Practice connects academic preparation with professional reality. Consultations offer targeted guidance. Therefore, higher education relies not on one single form, but on a pedagogically balanced system of forms, each addressing a different educational need. The lecture is identified here as the main form of teaching in higher education. Its value lies in the systematic explanation of material, with the teacher presenting key information in a logical and organized sequence. In this sense, the lecture establishes the conceptual and methodological foundation of the discipline. At the same time, the slide quite properly notes that lectures alone are not sufficient for complete understanding. They provide a framework for learning, but that framework must be developed further through additional forms of education. Therefore, the lecture remains central, though never isolated from the broader instructional system. This slide introduces several different lecture types used in higher education. These include the thematic lecture, the overview lecture, the consultation lecture, and the special course lecture. The existence of these types demonstrates that the lecture as a form is internally differentiated according to educational purpose. Accordingly, the lecture is not a uniform pedagogical event. Rather, its structure and function vary depending on whether the goal is detailed treatment of a single topic, general synthesis of several topics, clarification of difficult material, or delivery of specialized knowledge beyond the standard curriculum. The thematic lecture is described here as the most common lecture type in higher education. It is devoted to one specific topic and develops that topic in detail, thereby allowing students to achieve deeper understanding of the subject matter. The slide also places the thematic lecture in a broader sequence by referring to the introductory lecture, which presents the structure and key themes of the course, and the final lecture, which summarizes the main results of study before assessment. Thus, the thematic lecture should be viewed as part of a wider lecture system that includes orientation, development, and consolidation. presentation then turns to 3 further lecture forms. The overview lecture gives a general analysis of multiple topics and helps students see wider conceptual connections. The consultation lecture focuses on difficult parts of the curriculum and creates a space for clarification through student questions. The special course lecture offers deeper and more specialized knowledge that extends beyond the standard program. These distinctions are pedagogically important because they show that lecture forms differ according to intellectual function. Some organize broad perspective, others remove specific difficulty, while still others provide advanced specialization. Consequently, the lecture in higher education is both varied and purpose-centered. The slide on practical classes introduces a more applied form of education. Practical classes are designed to help students convert theoretical concepts into actual performance through exercises, case studies, and problem-solving tasks. In contrast to the lecture, the student here does not remain in a receptive position. Rather, the student works actively with the material. This form is especially important for the development of confidence, skill, and professional competence. Repeated practical engagement strengthens understanding because theory is not simply remembered but used. Therefore, practical classes serve as a necessary bridge between conceptual knowledge and operational ability. The next slide unites 2 further forms of instruction, seminars and laboratory work. Seminars are discussion-based and require students to present, argue, exchange views, and defend positions. Thus, they develop critical thinking, communication, and the ability to reason publicly. Laboratory work has a different orientation. It involves experiment, use of equipment, and direct investigation, often in small groups or through partly independent activity. Accordingly, seminars and laboratory work complement one another. The first strengthens analytical and verbal competence, while the second develops empirical and procedural skills. The final thematic slide broadens the discussion by moving beyond traditional classroom forms. It introduces pedagogical practice, interactive learning, and distance learning as significant components of modern higher education. Pedagogical practice provides real professional experience in schools or educational settings. Interactive learning develops teamwork and communication through group work and role play. Distance learning, in turn, expands educational flexibility through digital access and online participation. The key conclusion of the slide is particularly well stated. Only a combination of traditional and modern forms can ensure the preparation of graduates who are not only knowledgeable but also practical, adaptable, and professionally ready. In this respect, the contemporary university must work through integration rather than exclusion. Thank you for your attention. I hope this lecture has clarified the principal forms of organization of education in higher education institutions and has shown how their thoughtful combination supports conceptual understanding, practical competence, and professional development.